What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Kaulignation, and more specifically, the Ramen is Racing podcast here on the channel. I'm joined, as always, by my partner in crime. Ryan, what's going on, man?
Hey, it's going. Night before Thanksgiving for us here in the United States. So, as I was just telling you off air, my wife's been busy baking cookies and making bread and getting ready for tomorrow's festivities with our family. So, I'm super excited for that and to spend some time with you and all of our friends over here in Kaulignation for a little while. So, it's good. It's good. I'm happy.
Yeah, I know we don't have a loaded episode like the previous ones, and to highlight this comment right here, I wish I could join your league via PC. You don't need the league that we're doing if you have PC, nor do you need NASCAR 25. Go iRace, man. It's worth the money and the investment. Easy for me to say. Mine was a slow build up over years in terms of purchasing all the software, the tracks, etc. Or the content rather. Um, so like to just go into iRacing and have to buy everything off the get go, especially if like you don't have a wheel or a good place to uh set it up at. Like it's an expensive endeavor. But we're going to touch more on that league stuff and NASCAR 25 on this stream for sure. It's something we've wanted to talk about. And for those of you that do have access to an Xbox, we have something what I think is pretty cool, anyways, coming up. And we'll tell you about that soon. But in this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about uh, the Red Bull extension for Trackhouse. It's a lucrative one, a big uptick in races, and explains why they almost have to have their hand forced and run the Project 91 car at times this year, simply due to sponsorship commitments. We're going to talk a little bit about Kaulig Racing, what's going on with Ram. There wasn't a whole lot to pick apart of Chris's interview today. What we did gather, we did put out on social media. NASCAR starts, what is it, Monday? Monday the trial, Ryan?
Monday starts the trial. Yes.
This thing's just going to keep getting uglier and uglier. Ugh. Yeah,
It's
we'll
bad.
talk about it. Yeah,
we
I wish
knew it was going to get bad.
I wish there was a super positive spin on it, but like, oh, it's all going to work out in the end. Maybe not. Like it's I'm not sure I've quite ever experienced it done this way. Like we hear about like collective bargaining agreement issues in the other major sports, probably more frequently than we would like to in some of them, especially if you're an NHL fan. But for me, like this is another level altogether. What's going on with the NASCAR court stuff? Let's start there. I'm firmly behind the teams, especially the further this goes and the more stuff continues to come out that makes me just kind of feel very uneasy about the whole situation. Where are you at, man, with what's going on between NASCAR and I would say just 2311 and FRM, but each and every week we find out something they've said about another owner, regardless of the validity or lack thereof in the comments. It's getting uglier by the day, dude.
It is, and unfortunately, I think one of the reasons NASCAR wanted to settle so vigorously there towards the end of the season, week of Phoenix in particular, was they knew these texts and emails were going to come out. And listen, I don't know how much what we saw over the last week in these text messages would hold up in a court, right? Like how much they would actually play into a decision. But let me tell you, absolutely look horrendous for the leadership of NASCAR. And the way they just talked so derogatory towards Richard Childress in particular, but just all the teams, and not over the last handful of batches that we've seen come out in the last 6 months, it's just constant degradation of the teams. And yes, it's a 2-team lawsuit, but it affects all of them. And I wish the other teams had more of a backbone to have gotten in on this lawsuit from the beginning, because I really do think would have been very beneficial. I still think it will be very beneficial, truthfully. But yeah, I mean, if these texts don't show the monopolistic aspect of NASCAR, the way they were literally threatened by the SRX series, and how they were basically saying the drivers were ungrateful for running in that series instead of staying loyal to NASCAR, but yet NASCAR was threatening to pull all of the team's charters over this last negotiation. Like, it's clear that they've got some monopolistic aspects. So I don't know what the end result's going to look like. I do think the teams will win in some aspect, but it's going to change the sport. It's going to drastically alter the way things are done. And I listen, we're 3 months from Daytona, and I don't think we're going to have a clear picture, even at that point, what the ramifications of this lawsuit will look like at that point. But you talked about collective bargaining, and this is NASCAR trying, well, the teams, I should say, trying to get to a point where they can even collective bargain. Had the NBA, the NHL, the NFL, any of the major sports tried to form their unions like they currently have today, right, we'd be seeing the same sort of lawsuits. Like, the battles would exist across all of those sports had they not had a union like they currently have in place. So once NASCAR and the teams figure this all out, my expectation is the teams will form a union, like they already have one. It's the Race Team Alliance, but it would be more formalized. Each team or each car within the team would be basically a franchise. And you're probably going to basically they're going to select a commissioner, and they're going to run it more like a stick and ball sport. And how that's going to play out in the realm of NASCAR, with when you have to incorporate the racetracks and multiple entities, teams within teams, obviously that structure is going to be really funky. But in the end, it's ugly. People are going to get hurt. People are going to get fired, because I don't see any realm of possibility how Steve Phelps and Steve O'Donnell survive this. Even if NASCAR comes out on top, those comments that they've made, there's no way the teams are going to trust them ever again. So I think those heads are going to roll, and it's going to be a clean, sweep of leadership, and it's going to be ugly. So I hate it. I hate that it's gotten to this point. But I told you when this lawsuit first came out last year that we'd probably get to this point. And I honestly, for the long-term future of the sport, not this year, not next year, not even at the end of the current TV deal, 10 years, 20 years down the road, what's being decided in the next month will have real long-term effects. And I do think it'll be for the betterment of the sport, even if the short-term pain is significant.
Yeah, I think one of the issues at hand here is not really knowing what that pain is going to look like, right? Like, it's kind of a entirely different scenario that we're not used to, that's about to possibly play out. I can't really see it not playing out at this point, to be honest. And what do you think some of the short-term effects could be? Like, as soon as
You want to know what I think the biggest short-term effect's going to be?
what's that?
Every charter will be eliminated. Charters go away. That's the short-term effect. It's going to be replaced by franchises or some variant of a franchise. But I think the major ramification of the decision is that the charter system as we know it will be scrapped, and they're going to start over. and what that means financially, if the teams are going to get any sort of
Gonna say,
windfall
I
or
would think they'd have to
it
take
doesn't
some
matter.
massive money
But
back.
I think it's a court decision more than anything else. I think the courts are going to strip the charter system and they're going to come up with something else. And again, the value is still going to be there, in my opinion. It's just going to look a little different. And it's going to take some time to piece it all together. So we could potentially go into next season without charters at all, but some sort of, court mandated protection that says the teams are going to get paid X amount of dollars until they can create some level of framework. Also, no matter what the outcome of this is, it's not going to be over. Like, it's going to be litigated beyond whatever decision is made here. It's going to go up to, I think it's the 4th Circuit or 8th Circuit, where, up there in North Carolina. They're going to have a say. I think that's a 5-panel, 5-judge panel. It could theoretically even go to the Supreme Court above that. Like, we're not going to actually get a full resolution to this in the next month. It's going to probably take years before it's all settled out. But the short-term ramification for sure is going to be, in my opinion, the charter system as we know it's going to be drastically affected.
Yeah, that could have some very polarizing effects, and we'll have to wait and see see how it all plays out. I mean, I know you and I talked before about how much you dig the legal side of things, and I do from a certain perspective, but I hate things like this that could get in the way of even the sport functioning properly. And some might argue it doesn't function properly as it stands, and that's why we're here. But I I don't know. I want a positive solution, but it seems like any chance of avoiding complete and utter, chaos has been thrown by the wayside, and it's coming. And I just hope, as a NASCAR fan, that it doesn't impede on any races and nothing gets shut down for a bit. We don't need anything like that. Believe it or not, the sport has enough issues with sponsorship and whatnot. Here's one thing I did want to pick out from NASCAR's side of things. Okay, so one of the reasons they're doing street courses is the fan event of it all, the special attraction. But we have heard them talk on numerous occasions, and by them I mean mainstream NASCAR media, about it's a money thing, it's profitable, the city pays out the ass, etc. And in NASCAR's notes, or their own, again, some of these could be doctored. They claim they've lost 25 million in each of the last 2 Chicago races. 25 million.
So I wish I would have taken a deeper dive at those particular messages, because I know they came out. I do believe that. Like, I legitimately believe they probably did. Because they had to pay the city of Chicago a lot of money to even get them to approve of the race, and they had to give a significant portion of the gate to the city. They had to give a significant portion of all of they paid for some really big acts to come in and do music, big concerts. They paid for those. The rain, I'm sure, those first 2 years that were literally monsooned out, certainly hurt them financially. It's like a lot of, when you try to implement major change, a lot of times you do subsidize it up front in hopes that you make the money back down the road. So yeah, I'd certainly believe that they lost money on Chicago, but the added benefit of all of the media attention, all of the commercials, all of the new fans, because they were successful with that. They said, I think the first season, 80% of all tickets sold were to new households. Like those are the metrics they're chasing, at knowing that they might lose money in the long run doing it. So whether that you deem that successful or not, I guess, is up in the eye of the beholder. But yeah, it cost them a lot of money to put that show on, and it's probably costing them a lot of money to put San Diego on, in an effort to raise their notoriety. And listen, like I know we both play F1, but I don't know how much you follow F1. This last weekend they were in Las Vegas. I stayed up. The race was at 11 o'clock last Saturday night. My wife and I watched it start to finish, and it was the racing sucked, but it was more than the racing. It was the glitz, the glamour, the celebrities, everything.
Actual celebrities coming out, feeling like an
Actual
actual big
celebrities.
event. Yes.
It felt big, right? Like it felt like a marquee event, like it was Tyson and Holyfield, right? Using Vegas as an example. That's what NASCAR is trying to achieve with San Diego and Chicago. And F1 is knocking it out of the park with what they're doing in Vegas. So that's kind of what they're trying to get to. It's more than just the race. It's more than a few dollars here and there. They're desperately trying to engage the fan in that way. And listen, that race got a 1.5 million views. I mean, that's on par with a lot of NASCAR races this year. So it's clearly working for those guys.
Yeah, NASCAR needs to go to a place like that, do the street course in Vegas, right? Be under the lights, have it be this big thing. I'm sorry, I don't see San Diego doing that. Like, you can be the most patriotic person on planet Earth, but that's not the same type of event that F1 put on for Vegas. And the frustrating part is, and it's not a very good course. Like, you and I have done all the F1 courses over the years, and I don't know if you had a chance to play that one. I did on the most recent game,
I have
and
played it, yeah.
it's not a good course. It's just not. However, the way that they present the event, the cars under the light, the start time, right? Like, NASCAR doesn't do that, and they could. And the beaten, honestly, there'd be more beaten and banging. Harder to get around those tight turns, but like,
But that's NASCAR road course at its finest, right? Like
right?
when they are
Like,
beating and banging and knocking the fenders off their cars because they can't pass otherwise. That's when NASCAR road racing is at its absolute best, and why they jumped from 2 races to 7, because the end of the Gen 6 era, we're putting on some banger races on the road courses. And it's because they could get close to each other and push each other out of the way. And the new car, as good as it is in a lot of aspects, it's too good on the road courses. They're too precise. It needs to be more rough and tumble for it to work. And track like Vegas would definitely allow that, because some of those chicane hairpin corners, man, are sharp. So it would look, I think NASCAR would look really good at Vegas, because they would have long straightaways to try to make some passes, dive bombs into those corners. And when they don't make it work, somebody's going for a mess. So that's actually what NASCAR should be striving for when it comes to their road racing.
no argument here. Again, like, there's events that you can put on, and then there's your, typical run of the mill thing. I'm not saying San Diego isn't going to be an event. For NASCAR purposes, I think it absolutely will be an event. But that being said, I firmly believe that when you look at what F1 did with the Vegas race, dude, is it's an attraction to not just F1 fans, but to tourists, to people at home because of the way it's presented. Your non-casual fan, you're bringing in that new audience that NASCAR claims to have all this desire for, but doesn't ever seem to make the right decisions in order to get some of that new audience in. Yeah, I'd like to see them go there or do something like that. Like, that is an actual event. Just go look at the celebrity list from last week, and you're lucky if you get one celebrity that big show up to a NASCAR event, let
And
alone
and let's be
the
honest,
parade of them they
yeah,
had come out.
NASCAR's paying for those celebrities to be there, or
Yeah,
they're advertising for a movie or whatever, right? They're not coming on their own free will. Where F1, you're getting those celebrities to show up because it's a destination. It's going to help their brand, right? That's the way you have to think of it. How can you help celebrities with their brand? Because that's how you're going to get them to show up outside of paying them a lot of money to be there. And that's where F1 really excels. Like it's again, it's how they present the drivers, it's how they present the events, it's how they present the celebrities. It's all in the presentation. The racing side of it is actually secondary. Now, I don't want NASCAR to turn into that, but there's ways you can merge that into one unit and do the best of both worlds. Because I do think the NASCAR product as a whole is significantly better than what F1 puts out on the track. But the F1's, the way they sell it is totally, totally better than what NASCAR could ever do. So, long way to go on that. Circling back to this lawsuit, I don't think that's going to fix a lot of those issues, but I definitely think the France family, who definitely runs the sport like a Gestapo, giving up a little bit of control and having it more as I said, pick a commission. I mean, listen, if I was picking one, I would say put Kevin Harvick in charge of the sport tomorrow, or somebody along those lines, somebody that's actually cares about racing, knows how to schmooze sponsors, but actually knows what they're trying to achieve, and you're going to see some better results. Right now, the France family is so worried about their own personal image and how they can make money for themselves that they really, really don't care about what they're putting out as a product. So, I again, like, I don't expect this to be the overnight fix of whatever this lawsuit turns out to become, but I really do hope long time, looking 5 years, 10 years down the road, one of the byproducts of the lawsuit would be a change of leadership. And then with that change of leadership, a change of vision to try to make the sport better.
yeah. I don't think there's any chance Kevin Harvick would be named commissioner. If you look at the trends in basically every other major sport, the commissioner has a background in being a lawyer, which I don't believe Kevin Harvick does, but I won't rule it out. I can't say I know what he does on the spare time. But yeah, we'll continue to watch it as it goes. But honestly, for the betterment of the sport, you just need to fucking find a. There's not going to be a quick resolution because it already hasn't been quick. We're already at the point now where things have gotten ugly. Um, so I just think the the quicker you can get off of this topic and move on to something positive, the better for the sport it'll be. And whether they're able to navigate those waters successfully and be able to do that, we'll have to wait and see. Um, Nathan Campbell, a loyal follower of what we do here, asked, "Do you guys have a number update?" Believe it or not, I don't think Ryan and I have talked about this actually. Uh, we do. We do have a number update. And it's so weird because this is where you got to be careful when putting out information because you don't want to get the information wrong and you don't want to mislead anybody. But I can tell you at one point yesterday, I was told pretty emphatically what one of the numbers was going to be that has not been announced. And then I listened to literally not 10 minutes later, I listened to Daniel Dye's interview on Sirius XM. And Daniel Dye basically went on to squash what that number was going to be. And basically in the interview, he talks about how he would have liked to run the 43. And well, he didn't say it's definitively not happening. He said he doesn't think it's going to happen, and that he implied they made a pass for it, and just doesn't seem like it's going to happen. And to me, there's a bunch of history there, right? Like Legacy Motor Club might be a Toyota brand for now, but when people think Richard Petty, people think Dodge, people think Mopar, people think STP, people think 43. And so the 43 being on a Dodge would have been, on a Ram rather, would have been really cool. But apparently that's not going to come to be unless they're planning on like surprising Daniel with it. I would assume Daniel's going to drive the 10. We have heard that one of the other numbers is going to be the 16. So right now you got 10, you got 25, and from what we understand, 16. I really thought 43 was going to be a go, but it doesn't sound like it. Any guess at the other numbers, Ryan, if it's 10, 25, and 16?
Yeah, I mean those numbers seem pretty locked in. I actually thought they'd go with get the 43 as well. I don't think that number was in circulation last year, so um, I do believe Bill McAnally had it because Daniel drove it when he was with them. But um, yeah, I don't know. I honestly don't. When it comes to the numbers and who uses what in the trucks and what's free, I don't actually know what the direction would be for, because obviously we know Dodge has a lot of sway. So, maybe they can figure out a way to get the 9, because I know that was a big Dodge number as well. But that's kind of would be my one thought, was they might try to get the 9 somehow to correlate with the red Dodge from Evernham when they got back in the sport. But truthfully, outside of that, I am kind of just wait and see mode on that front.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have ruled out a 9 and 19 possibility. Obviously, they would have had to go get the 19 from McNally. And what was that? Hemrick's number last year, the 19?
It was Hemrick's number last year, and they haven't actually announced a driver for the 19 yet. I'm assuming it's going to be Hemrick, right? But they actually haven't made that announcement yet. So, maybe there's a way to get the 19 involved as well. They're definitely getting the 16 from them. So, maybe there's additional dealings in place. But because we do know one thing for sure is that Christian Eckes will be in the 91. So that does leave the 19 still available. My assumption is that's going to be Daniel Hemrick's truck with Bill McAnally. And the 11 would make a lot of sense, but unfortunately, that is the Tricon Garage flagship truck, and there's a 0% chance Kaulig lands that 11 number. So, with that one out of the picture, the only other one that, when you think of Kaulig, the 14, they ran the 14 a little bit in the Xfinity Series. And then, of course, the 31 was their Cup car before they switched it to 10. So, I would assume they would want to stay in that family if they could. The 13 is taken. Yeah.
Okay. Wasn't sure.
Yeah. So, again, that's just me spitballing numbers that would make sense for Kaulig. And 9 would make sense for Dodge. 9 and 19 would make sense for Dodge. So we'll see. Maybe they can figure out a way to get some of those numbers in play. But because I am curious about Billy, Butterbean as well, because I obviously he's coming on board in a new truck that doesn't seem to have a number yet that we're aware of. Whether he had a number that he was associated with in his previous career or not that they might try to pull, that's also a possibility. And I honestly don't know what his number was when he ran late models. But that could also be a possibility as well, that they try to get a number that means something to Butterbean specifically. So I think there's a lot of opportunities there. And honestly, I have no idea where they're going to go.
Yeah, those are the numbers I'd pay attention to as well. I never really thought about the whole 9 and 19 thing until tonight, but like they were their re-entry numbers back into NASCAR, so I wouldn't rule those things out. Let's see here. Dirty Death says I really enjoyed hearing Daniel talk about the work he does outside of the race car with his charity. They're doing great work. Yeah, he's a really charitable guy, and Race to Stop Suicide is obviously a very vital and important cause. I love that it finds its way onto the cars and probably will onto the trucks as well. Um, yeah, I mean, I have no problem with Daniel. I thought he took a little bit of a step back this year compared to his part-time run last year in the uh, in the
Yeah,
Xfinity series.
I mean,
But
the
I think
Kaulig
he'll
equipment took a step back too. I mean,
a
yeah,
big one.
yeah. So I mean, obviously Christian Eckes finished 13th in points, first driver not in the playoffs, which was very impressive for him. But I think it's fair to say the Kaulig equipment, even the last 2-3 years, really was starting to go the wrong direction. And listen, last year that was a struggle, and honestly, I put more onus on the equipment more so than the driver, truthfully.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that type of criticism was earned in full spades, in my opinion, this past season. So, um, all right. So yeah, that's what we've heard on the number front. 16 sounds like it's a lock, and I wouldn't completely rule out the possibility that they're trying to surprise Daniel with a 43 reveal, and he just doesn't know yet. But that's not the feeling I got from that interview. The feeling I got is he knows his number and isn't allowed to say what it is. And then they also tried to get him to comment on like crew chiefs and stuff, and he laughed and basically said, "You're gonna get me in trouble," and left it at that. So that's where we are with that. In terms of Chris Rice's radio hit today, man, I didn't really hear much of anything other than they're behind on hanging bodies, but they're gonna get caught up by working through the month of December. Um, we've thought for basically since the deal was announced that it was a 10-year deal, and if you take his comments at face value, he basically confirmed it was a 10-year deal today. I think one of the more interesting comments he made was the fact that Matt Kaulig has been in the sport for 10 or 11 years, whatever it was he said, has had no OEM Tier 1 support, which I find very interesting because for most of
And
those
frankly,
years they're in.
contradictory to what he said in the
Oh,
past.
yeah. Yes, very, very contradictory because most of those years were spent in Xfinity. And we had heard they had Tier 1 support
Hell, he
in
said it
Xfinity.
multiple times. I mean, listen,
Yeah, I
I've
mean, it
learned to
hasn't.
take what he says as a real grain of salt, but like, it wasn't like it was a one-time thing. I mean, he mentioned it the years that AJ was winning the regular season championships. He was very adamant that they were a tier one team and they were getting the best support they could, and blah blah blah. So maybe there's a little bit of an undertone to what he's meaning by that, and be specifically to the Cup side, but. Um, there we go again. Chris Rice saying things that contradict Chris Rice's own words.
Yeah, yeah, I found those comments interesting. So we'll see. And then they also said they're looking to hire even more engineers, despite hiring a bunch, and said they're gonna, do the engine stuff their way. And I thought you could read into that a combination of them and Dodge will be doing their own engine program, and they're in the early stages of it. That's how I read that comment as probably the most interesting thing to said during that interview. And he didn't say it outright, obviously, but that's what I gathered from that. I don't know if you gathered the same thing or not.
Yeah, I'm literally just going off what we just said about him kind of speaking two truths. I'm a little. I don't believe one way or the other yet what direction they're going. I have no doubt Dodge is going to do the majority of the heavy lifting, at least up front, in terms of getting the engine, um, you know, spec'd and approved by NASCAR. And, maybe once everything has been designed, then Kaulig themselves can start building the engines in house. Um, because obviously that's going to be, as they just said, like they're behind on hanging bodies. They're trying to build the wind tunnel. They're trying to build their sims. Like obviously the engines are the most crucial part of the Cup Series. Yeah, but that's a big bite of apple that requires some significant effort. So I definitely believe they will eventually get to that point, but I tend to lean towards Dodge doing the vast majority of that heavy lifting, and maybe even forming their own shop outside of Kaulig with Kaulig support, part of that effort. So we'll see. I am legitimately curious because that is the most important aspect to all of this. And we're like, we've talked. Can they make it for 2027? Doubt it. Are they going to make it for 2028? Probably. And honestly, the big hurdle to all of that is the engine and getting it approved by NASCAR, and then testing the living shit out of it to make sure you got something that's going to not only be within the performance bandwidth, but also provide you that security blanket that it's not going to implode after 200 miles. So they are going to be doing some significant testing before they're ready to put that on track.
Yeah, I think they definitely want to be ready for 2027. I mean, Tim Kaniskis has said that himself. They haven't ruled it out, but they were certainly, Tim himself, when he talked to Bob Pockrath recently, were, I guess, rolling back expectations on where it might actually come into play. And he was basically telling everybody to, cool it with the 2027 expectation, despite him being the one to put it out there. It sounds, look, if it's not ready for 2027, it will be ready for 2028. But it could be a long couple of very painful years on the Cup side, even if they are getting financial support from Ram. At the end of the day, their support from Chevrolet, we assume, is down to nothing. So 2 years is a long time, man, to be a ghost team.
It is. It really is. And at the end of the day, that was one of the qualifiers he put out there today, was like, yeah, it's going to be a struggle up front. And I think he's talking the Cup side more than he is the truck side, because yes, there's going to be some initial struggles on the truck side, but I personally think by halfway point of next season, the truck program will be humming along just fine and performing pretty well. But the primary focus is then going to be on the Cup program. So we'll see where it stands. We obviously still don't know who's going to be in that 10 car. Yeah, we know AJ is going to do the best with what he's got in the 16 car. And listen, honestly, I know the point standings don't really reflect it, but if they can even match performance-wise what they did this year over the next 2 years, I'd be pretty okay with that, because a lot of times they shot themselves in the foot with decent speed, more so than the car just being out to lunch. If they could just stay in this current envelope of being a mid-pack team with AJ pulling out some good runs sporadically, that's okay for me. I'm okay with that, and I think they would be too, honestly.
Yeah, I think added importance will be there on all the road courses. And not to rain on people's parade, I'm not saying AJ can't win one. You're going to need luck with how SVG is running. But it's going to be really important that they go out there and run top 10 on those days, even if they're running 9th or 10th, and bring home those finishes on those tracks. And
I think they will too, honestly. I'm not too worried about that. Top 10s at road courses should be pretty much layups for them. But maybe that's just me being a little ahead of myself. But honestly, like AJ's skill, unless he himself begins to diminish, which is a possibility at his age, we've seen this year with SVG totally dominating that they were pretty steadily a 6th, 7th place car most weekends when they went to the road courses. I really don't, but with the car being a spec car, there's not a lot changing. The new Chevy body is frankly not that new. It's pretty consistent with what they had. I don't think that's going to alter a lot. They can run those notes back pretty easily and I think stay relatively competitive. And even at tracks like we know he's good at, Vegas, Miami, maybe Bristol. He's been all right at Bristol the last couple of years. Like we know there are a couple tracks that he should excel at outside of those road courses as well. And listen, he had a couple top fives on some ovals that were a little bit surprising. I wouldn't expect him to run those back without a little bit of luck, but I don't see any reason why he can't continue to rattle off 6, 7, 8 top tens over the course of a season at tracks we know he's good at.
Yeah, no, like I was actually going to get into that point myself in terms of I think he's going to have issues at places like Homestead and Darlington and Vegas and maybe even Bristol and some of those places that he's really run strong the last little bit. I don't like. I'm not saying he's not going to be like top 10, top 15. He might be, but I think there's going to be added extra emphasis on him running good on the road courses, even if you're not competing for a win. Have your car up there in the top 10, but also on the super speedways. Because, well, he might hate it. He's a good super speedway racer. And I think it's going to be important to go out there and try to capitalize on as much of that as he possibly can.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I agree, I agree, first off. But the thing with super speedways is you're just rolling the dice. Hell, he was literally leading at Talladega with, I don't know if that car was good or capable of winning, but he certainly had a top 10 car there at Talladega at a bare minimum. And he got wiped out leading the damn race, right? Like that's the part of it you just can't control. You bring the best piece you can, and we trust AJ to stay out of the trouble for the most part, and he does that pretty well. That is one of his skills, but you just there are years where it kind of rolls your way and you can walk out with 3 top 10s, and there'll be years where it don't and you walk out with 3 30th place finishes. So, and it really doesn't matter how good your car is. You really are at the mercy of so many other factors. To me, again, performance, the finishes matter. Obviously, that's why you show up to the track. But if they can show that there's performance in those cars, that's the benchmark for me, more so than the finishes. And you take those, just take them how they are, and hope you get a little bit of luck, right? Because that they did shoot themselves in the foot a ton this year, but they also got really unlucky down the stretch with a couple of those accidents. So you just hope he can put it together for 36 races. That's obviously the part where Kaulig struggles and where they will continue to struggle, especially without support. And then just looking at the chat here, they're asked, as Dirty Jeff asked, do you think they'll get some Chevy simulator time? Nope, they will not. So trying to make the best out of that without that Chevy sim time is where they're probably going to start falling behind.
Yeah, like they might be, and I think this is even unlikely to be honest. They might be able to pay for some sim time because they paid out of pocket for more sim time this year, and that's when they had some Chevy support, although apparently very little. But yeah, I would assume no. Like they're gonna have to do all that stuff in house and do it a little bit old school as well. So
But I do want to
they,
emphasize they are building their own simulators. They have made that
yes,
clear. They are building 2 simulators, in fact. Um, Probably a full 360 sim and probably something a little bit smaller. So they might not get Chevy simulator support, but at some point, hopefully next season, but maybe in 2027, they will be able to do their own simulator work, and God knows what that's going to look like, but at least they'll have that available.
oh, I think they'll be doing it this year. I think it'll be available to them sooner than people think. But there's a dialing in process that goes with that, and it's going to be interesting to see what they're able to do with that because essentially they're tier 1 Ram team, and we know the Rams that support them on the Cup level as well. And by Ram, we mean more so mean Stellantis than Ram. But yeah, things are changing, things are happening. Last thing on the Kaulig front, man. Um, Still no confirmation on Ty Dillon, although we believe that we actually there's two more things on the Kaulig front. We believe Ty's back simply from process of elimination and what someone told us. There's just no real other options out there, right? The other option you might have lobbied for would have been Christian Eckes, who, seemingly now has nothing to do with the team. There's not even a goodbye post or message from either party in it. It just kind of happened abruptly, and the only thing we've heard about it is really Daniel Dye in an interview saying they're not going to be teammates anymore. Dude, I don't know about you. We've had a pretty good vibe on, or a good reading of the vibe on things over the last little bit. This feels like bad blood written all over it.
Yeah, I personally am not going to go so far as to say bad blood because we simply don't know, and I'm not quite comfortable saying that. But it is certainly disappointing that there's been nothing. No comments from Chris Rice, no comments from Christian Eckes, no comments from the social media team. Just completely silent until he was formally announced for Macadally last week in the 91, and then kind of radio silence since then. So I personally got the opinion or the vibes that he was planned for the third full-time truck. Um, that was the plan, and then Justin Haley becomes available, and I don't know if it was something within that decision making process where Haley became the choice over Eckes, or Haley brings funding, or whatever that maybe pushed Eckes out, or maybe Eckes asked out because of that. Those are the things we don't know. Um, it's certainly disappointing that there wasn't anything from Kaulig acknowledging what Christian did for the program, especially knowing what Chris did say about him on XM radio over the last couple months. That it did sound like they had an extension in place with him, and that he was a long-term cog in the plans for Kaulig. That for that to just completely fall apart without anything coming out, that part's confusing. And Dirty Jeff said Chandler Smith 2.0. Possible. It's possible. It could be.
Right?
But we knew, like, we heard that coming, right? That wasn't a shock to us. Like the rumors started coming out weeks in advance that Chandler Smith was, talking to a different girl, right? That he was reaching out to JGR and trying to buy out of his deal. And, that was messy from the start. And we knew what was happening. This has just been nothing. So, yeah, I don't know. It very well could be bad blood, but I don't want to be accusatory to the team nor towards the driver one way or the other without knowing more.
Yeah, I don't know if we're ever going to know more. I think the fact it's pretty telling that they've said nothing, in my opinion, considering how Chris has handled some of the other off-season stuff. And then let's not forget that there was pretty critical comments about Christian early in the season that were kind of really all laid at his feet, which I thought was unfair at the time, considering how the equipment was performing. And we kind of know firsthand that the CEO wasn't really thrilled with our stance on his comments on Christian. Kind of went out of his way to say so. Didn't mention us by name, but it was very clear who he was talking about. And sometimes that happens. Sometimes, as much as you want something to work out, it doesn't, and then change happens. What we do know is Justin Haley, when he very first became available, was basically told there's no room with Kaulig. And then all of a sudden there was room. I know we don't like reading too much into things, but it certainly feels like Justin Haley might have got the truck that was intended for Christian Eckes.
Yeah, and that I do agree with you on. It feels like Eckes got two short straws potentially. Obviously, having an Xfinity contract with Kaulig and an Xfinity program falling apart, short straw number one. And then short straw number two, very much possibly being Justin Haley being chosen over him. Um, and again, I want to say more, but I'm not going to speculate on that. Besides the fact that I do think it's a possibility that it happened. Um, and if that is the case, to me, it's not that I don't dislike Justin. I actually very much like Justin, but I would love to do a pros and cons of Justin Haley versus Christian Eckes in terms of maybe a future for your Cup program, right? We've already seen Haley in the Cup car. We've seen him driving for Kaulig Inspire and being around the block for 5-6 seasons at this point. Christian Eckes obviously not. When you're trying to think long-term future, who do you want to be basically the replacement for AJ? To me, I would have preferred Eckes over Haley, but you could certainly convince me as to why Haley would be preferred as well. So, again, I think that's probably the decision that had to be made internally with Kaulig, and it feels like they chose Haley over Eckes, and only time will tell if that was the right decision or not.
Yeah, it's a tough one. That would be a good either standalone video or live stream subject to tackle for sure. All right, so let's talk about Red Bull. Red Bull goes from supporting Trackhouse 9 times this past season to coming up on this next season. They will be, I might have the number of races wrong. I want to say it's 24 or 26, one of the two. I think it's 24 races that Red Bull's doing with Trackhouse. Even amount of races, I believe, each for SVG and Connor Zilish. They're kind of going with like a Team Red, Team Blue theme. We heard rumors about Project 91 running more this upcoming season, and with an influx of sponsorship like that, it's not hard to see why. Your thoughts on Red Bull really, upping their game here in NASCAR again?
It's good for the sport. Like we were just talking about what's good for NASCAR, what's bad for NASCAR, and Red Bull coming back in such a significant capacity is a huge win for Trackhouse. Obviously, Lynn just clarified it's 25 races. So, and Jeff as well. Is it Jeff? I'm calling you Jeff. It's Dirty Deaf. But it's a big deal. Like Red Bull is one of the most recognized brands in the whole world, right? Like, I mean, truly, I would say Coca-Cola and Red Bull. And those are like tier 1 brands when it comes to just everything, the way they advertise, the fact they're in multiple forms of sports around the world. Obviously, Red Bull with their F1 and all the other stuff they do. Honestly, last year we went to a cliff diving competition sponsored by Red Bull in the city of Boston, where I'm from here, which is wild. They were jumping from the top of a freaking building into the into the bay here in Boston, which was just nuts. Like they do some crazy stuff, and for them to decide that NASCAR was a direction for them that they wanted to get back into, really beneficial. Obviously, it pays off for Trackhouse. It pays off for SVG. It's going to really pay off for Connor Zilish. Right. Like I think that's going to make a huge difference for them in terms of stability and honestly, Trackhouse performance over the last couple of years has they are a tier 1 Chevy program, but they've definitely started to just kind of ever so slightly fall behind the other major programs like Hendrick and JGR and Penske. And I think this is what they need to get their baseline set to try to compete with those teams. And they've certainly got the driver talent to do it. I'm very excited to see Red Bull have a prominent place in the sport. I wish Kaulig was in on that, but you know what? I love me some Celsius. I appreciate their relationship with Kaulig and all that. So, but that aside, very happy that Red Bull's back, and it seems like they're basically going to sponsor 2 cars full time next year, which is pretty crazy, but in a good way.
Yeah, well, I don't know about full time. They're doing about a third of a season each. But kudos to them. It's a big step up. Essentially, if it is 25 races, it's a 16 race increase on sponsorship between the 2 cars. I will ask you this as we're winding down here. Who could you see being possibility for that Project 91 ride? Because clearly it's going to have to run a few times.
I truly have no idea. I mean, obviously, looking back at their pool, their history, they've pulled F1 drivers. So wouldn't surprise me if they continued to try to tap into that market a little bit. Obviously, they've done supercars with SVG. Maybe there's some more supercar drivers that would be given a shot. Honestly, even an IndyCar driver. I think what we're going to see is a driver that currently races at the highest level of whatever series they're in, more so than a retired driver. But that said, I am kind of in the weeds in terms of who would be a viable candidate for how many races. You kind of hit the nail on the head here. It seems like they've got more sponsorship than they do cars. So I kind of suspect you're going to see that Project 91 car at least a half dozen times, maybe more than that. So, we're going to see multiple drivers or one driver get multiple races. Those are all questions that I'm very curious to see what they decide to do with.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what comes of it. I always like when someone else from another sport comes over and tries their hand in it. I know some people have gotten tired of the SVG show. I haven't. I think it sets a new par for people to attain, and I think that personally, in my opinion, I think it's good for the sport. I'm not expecting Max Verstappen to step over anytime soon. Probably not ever, to be honest. But yeah, I think it's good for the sport. So, also wanted to touch on. Let's see, we did the Kaulig numbers. I think it was Dirty Death that put this out there. I can't see the chat at the moment. But he had mentioned that he thought he knew who won the still currently unannounced Ram show, and all I will say is Ryan and I know who won. We're not going to say anything, but I didn't know very much about this individual, so I had to search it up. I don't know if Ryan knew anything about the individual without giving anything away, but I very much had to do some research after hearing it.
Well, that's not surprising, right? Like that was my expectation, is that we know at least 7 drivers now. I don't know if more than that participated, but we definitely know of that many names, and most of these names are coming from where I thought they would come from, which is the late model series. There's multiple late model series. It's not just one. So I wasn't super familiar with the results of these individuals, but I had heard their names thanks to drivers like, Matt Weaver, or drivers, media individuals like Matt Weaver, who really do a great job of covering the short track scene. But we got wind through a couple of our sources who A, participated, and B, who won. And yeah, I had to do some research, but from what I've seen, what I've found, I am very excited about what's to come. This individual has accomplished, I would say, enough at his level to warrant the opportunity. And obviously how that translates from a late model to a truck is to be determined. But we've seen other drivers come from this world and be successful, right? It's becoming a proven track. It's becoming a good proving ground for future superstars. So I certainly am not expecting him to do anything out of this world, but I wouldn't be surprised either if he outperforms most people's expectations.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't have any expectations. He could light the world on fire, or it could be a disaster. I don't know, but he definitely has some qualifications to be there, and hopefully the show's presented in a good way that gets some eyeballs on him. That's all we'll really say about that. We mentioned it off the top. We are starting our own NASCAR 25 league. Some of you have already expressed interest in it. We are running late Friday nights. Race start time will either be 10:30 p.m. Eastern or 11. A couple of these races are going to be live streamed. All the races will have pictures posted from them, maybe some clips as well. The problem with it is there's no broadcast option with the game like iRacing has. So anything that we stream is going to be from one car's perspective. It's the only POV you'll be seeing of the race, which isn't nearly as fun, in my opinion. But we think we've put together a nice little schedule for those that are going to be participating. Um, we kick off next Friday night with our first recruitment race. By the way, this is exclusively on the Xbox because there's no cross-platform play on this. So if you're a PlayStation user or a PC user, I'm sorry it won't work for you. But if you're an Xbox user, then please head on over to Facebook and sign up. Go to the groups function and type in Ramen is Racing, and you should find us over there next Friday night. Not this Friday, but the following Friday. We will be doing a recruitment race at Michigan. And then this Friday. Sorry, that was my wife choking. I promise it's not me. Um, the uh, the second one will be at Vegas, and the last one will be at Dover, with the actual regular season beginning at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. That was a little caveat I threw in there for Ryan. That, and I don't like starting on a super speedway with a bunch of people that you never really raced with. You want to ease into it, but we're doing a little 15 race season, and nothing too over the top. Pretty simple rules and points, and a few of us have run together the last couple of weeks, and it's fun. This is what I would say for NASCAR 25 is it's very clear when you're in the menus that a lot of the menu code is literally just taken from the previous last few NASCAR games, which is frustrating. I think it needed a cleanup and a new look. It just looks like NASCAR Heat essentially. Um, but well, no, I would also say on the cynical side or the critical side rather is the game lacks options and features. I think they had enough time for it to contain more than what it actually does. That being said, they said right from the very beginning, the one thing they want to get right is the racing on the track. And I can confirm, after spending a little bit of time with this title now, that they did get the racing on the track right. It's far and away the best NASCAR console game in terms of on track driving that there has ever been. I think NASCAR 09 has held that title for a long time, just in terms of the versatility of what you can do on track. It's not iRacing. I know there's people that want to make it out to be iRacing. It's not. That's hard to replicate, but it's the closest thing we've ever had to it on console. And I'll give you an example. We're racing Michigan last night, and there's 5 of us who are all going to be in the league, and we had 10 AI cars on, so 15 cars zooming around Michigan. The guy who's in first place is about 3 seconds ahead of me. And I decide I'm going to start doing the Kyle Larson. I'm going to keep the car up right up by the wall and try to gain time that way. And I was. He was 3 seconds ahead, and I got all the way to his back bumper. I was basically running the top. he was never attempting to go to the top, and I was as close to hitting the wall as you could be. And then he was probably on the low lane for some of it, and then the middle lane for more of it. But once it became clear I was going to pass him, he came up in front of me, right? And I'm not just going to run the guy over. This is a guy that we're in a league with who I've known for a long time. Be like if Ryan came up in front of me, I'm not just going to run him over. Like there's etiquette to racing, people. Some of you should try to find it. Um, and so if I'm not going to run him over, then I got to change my lane or attempt to like give him a little bump or something. The problem was once he moved up into my lane, I couldn't get to his back bumper. Boy, does that sound familiar. Um, Again, close 3 seconds. 3 seconds is a huge gap to close. And then once he moved up, I could get really close to his back bumper, but couldn't get all the way there. And so I tried to go down into the low lane and I tried the middle lane. And I just wasn't as good in those two lanes as he was. And so he started to walk away once he took that lane away from me. That's the type of racing, that's the type of oval racing that people have desired for years on console, to be able to have multiple lanes, to have the tire wear matter, to have that option. And to have that happen last night was, obviously I didn't win, but it was cool to have that happen. Ryan, you haven't had a chance to play it yet, but thoughts on everything you've heard and thoughts on the league?
Sounds like I'm gonna get my ass kicked, is what I'm hearing, but that's okay. Um, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's fun to be able to actually get real people. I know we've over the years have raced different forms of racing, whether it was NASCAR heats or F1, and I thankfully was able to learn from you a little bit and get better. But it skill matters, right? And the good games, especially when we switched over to F1, um, skill is going to matter, and it's going to require a little bit of give and take. And one thing I'm terrible at, which is conserving tire. I just like to mash and go, but you're going to pay for that. And to me, that's what I'm most excited about is that realism. I still hope, it's at the end of the day, it is a game. I hope they make it so you can still pass people, because in real NASCAR, you can't pass anybody, but we'll see. We'll see how that looks like in the long run over the course of a longer race. Right. So, it definitely is something
You
that,
can pass, but that little invisible bubble they refer to,
is real.
it's a thing.
Yeah. So that part's exciting. And that, as somebody that dabbled into iRacing, I never got out of the lower series. Like, I think you said you raced actual cup cars in iRacing. I never quite got
Yep.
that far. But the physics of doing iRacing and actually having to watch your P's and Q's and not wreck into other people to get your way. You actually had to earn it. That part is exciting. And especially when you get enough real people to participate, not just the AI, it's really going to take it to the next level.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's going to be a low-key league. We're going to cover it fairly extensively on the Ram and his Racing X account. And, some of it will cross over onto the Kaulig account too, but we're looking forward to it. We're getting into it slowly. We're not just going to jump right into a regular season, as you might have seen with the graphic that was up there earlier. If you're contemplating joining us, then the regular season doesn't begin until January the 2nd at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. That being said, if we've never raced with you before, you do have to make one of the recruitment races for approval so that we know that you're there to race for real and not just make everybody's life a living nightmare. So there's that too. But looking forward to it. The game's good. I agree with Def's comments, and looking forward to more. But I think that's going to do it for this episode tonight. So appreciate you all coming out here. Even though there wasn't as much to talk about tonight, we went for 70 minutes, and it seemed like you guys enjoyed the show and were active in the chat. We appreciate it. And as more of this Kaulig and Ram and truck stuff comes out, and just NASCAR stuff in general, we will continue to follow. But for now, that's going to do it for us. Big thank you to our channel sponsors, Lynn over at SVGNation, Alex over at Dingernation. Big thank you to our patrons. For bonus content, please sign up for patreon.com/Kaulignation. And for Ryan, I'm Sean, and we will see each and every one of you in the next video.